be at
Hi,
the beginning.
everybody. I'm Monty,
I'm Missy.
and today we are bringing you a recommendation from our Discord by Nishith, and it's by any Austin. The video is called Finding a Job in Fallout 3 Post-Apocalyptic Economy, and I wanted to do this one because Missy is about to reach endgame in her Fallout 3 playthrough. So if you guys haven't watched it, go on over to her YouTube channel to watch it. It's in the description down below.
Technically, I have reached the end game, but I still got post-game content and filling the map out.
Post-game.
That video will probably be posted either midnight. That video will be posted by the time this is up there. So, it will be entitled Getting Back to Business. It's a long one, you guys, but if you really want to get to the end game, just go ahead and skip to the end.
Yeah.
And watch, I don't know, the last, hour or so. So, because I have actually managed to get end game, we're gonna react to this one.
Fallout video.
A Fallout video.
And it's 18 minutes.
Let's talk about your job opportunities that you can have. You can join some sort of military. If you're lucky, I might be able to get into a town. You might be able to be a scavenger.
You can be a mailman.
Oh, that is true. You can be a courier. That is in New Vegas. So you can be a courier. All right, guys, let's see what this guy has to say.
Have you ever wondered what it might be like to try to find a job in the hit 2008 video game Fallout 3? I have. The world of Fallout 3 has been totally obliterated by nuclear weapons, and it's been taken over by roving gangs of jerks. But there's still some semblance of an organized economy, at least in the major settlements, and if you were looking for work in this world, those major settlements are exactly where you'd want to be.
Pause it.
Okay.
So you basically have two good options. You can either live in Rivet City, a city built inside the hulking ruins of an aircraft carrier, or you could live in Megaton, a settlement inside of a big hole surrounded by trash. Both
as long as you get rid of the preacher.
I do called too. Caps, and they have some variety of available industries to work in, but which one is doing better overall?
That's not true. There's another city you can live in.
Well, it's not a city, it's a building. There's Tenpenny Tower. Yes.
Yeah, but there's stuff in there. There's like a market and, it's safe. I don't know why a building is so much more, or so much less a city than a boat.
Well, a boat's a boat. But I suppose you do make a point. I mean,
and a building's a building.
So it's kind of like a building. It's kind of like an apartment building that has shops and things underneath it.
What the? Oh, Tenpenny Tower. I was like, what is that called?
Yes, Tenpenny Tower.
Okay.
Overall, how's the unemployment rate in each place? How diversified is the economy? What's the GDP? Is it even possible to calculate these things? You're also going to be looking at lots of graphs and at least one table and maybe this spreadsheet at least once. Let's start by talking about Megaton.
Okay.
Megaton is a city that seems to have been built inside the crater of an unexploded nuclear bomb.
Yes.
And its population seems largely made up of people who either currently or previously worked out in the nuclear wasteland as sort of mercenaries or as part of trade caravans. It's kind of a backwater Wild West sort of place within every man for themselves philosophy that's gradually transitioning into being a more stable and steady community. The population of Megaton
you get to
is
push the Brahmin over.
32. 25% of these people are unnamed settlers, people who seem to be newer to the community and haven't found solid footing yet. 12.5% of the population are devotees to a local church, which seems like a pretty big group, but the rest of them seem to be more permanently settled individuals who either have obvious jobs or have homes and roles, etc., etc. Let's take a look
Moriarty.
at the age demographic
I know you're not
breakdown.
supposed to, but I like
Nearly
them.
70% of the population is
you,
of working age, a
little
quarter of the
baby
population
girl.
is old, and just 6% are children. The most notable figure of those is going to be the 25% of people who are old, so let's keep that in the back of our mind as we proceed. Wouldn't it
Would
be
you
great
consider
if you could do
Moriarty
this
old?
type of extensive, self-motivated research on every
constitutes
single
old?
topic that's important to you in the real world? Yes, it would, but it's just not practical. So what do we do
Nathan?
instead? Well, we just
Who's Nathan?
Nathan? He's the guy
consume
who's always
headlines
talking
or
about the
posts via
Enclave.
algorithms, which is sort of
I didn't
He's
want to
the
stop on
guy-
that. Sorry, go
Okay.
on.
He's the guy who is always talking about the Enclave and how they're going to save everybody, but then at the end of the game he gets captured by the Enclave. And in my stream I accidentally killed him when he was trying to flee while I was trying to get out of the Enclave stronghold, because there was a Enclave soldier that was coming at me and I accidentally shot him, and then I'm like, oh shit, so I started over. But he doesn't go after the Enclave, but him and his wife are old.
Oh, okay.
I would say that Moriarty is probably like middle age, maybe like 50-ish. So he's not old, but he's not young. All right, you can press play.
decaying our ability to recognize and contextualize the truth. The annoying thing about what I'm saying right now is I'm using it to segue into an ad read for Ground News, which makes it seem like I don't actually believe it, and I just wrote it as a segue, but I do. It's also true. You can be getting paid and be telling the truth at the same time. I know it seems impossible. I think Ground News offers a reasonable solution.
I've
to
never
that
heard of
problem, or
Ground
at the very
News.
least, a big step in the right direction.
neither.
Ground News is a service that takes news stories that are being reported by multiple outlets. It gathers them up in one place and then clearly reports the potential biases for each outlet, as well as summarizing the differences in how each outlet is reporting on the same fundamental set of facts. You can see why this is appealing to me. It's impossible to get into all the little details of why this is so helpful
Missy
in a
likes
single
it.
ad read, but let me just highlight one of their features
because-
right now to try and
okay,
show you some of what's so great about it. They have this
I'm
thing
not
called the
pausing
blind
for an
spot
ad.
feature, which is a thing
I know
they
you're
use
not
to
pausing
very
for an
clearly
ad.
demarcate
I'm just
stories
saying
that
this
have
for
been
them.
ignored
I
by one
actually
side of the political
like,
spectrum in order to help fill out your
to
awareness.
be
Yes, I
able to
understand.
kind of
Okay, the political binary
have my
is
news
not
be more
perfectly
centered
illustrative
so
of our
that
society and so on and so on. But the blind spot
you can
feature really does
actually
work to help
get,
you hear about things you wouldn't have
both
otherwise heard about. For
sides.
example, why isn't the left-leaning
Although,
media reporting
you know,
on how many Macy's stores are closing? Or perhaps even more amusingly, why isn't the right-leaning media reporting on how nuclear bunkers probably aren't that effective? You can think to yourself maybe why those things might be occurring. Just having that tiny extra little bit of context about which type of outlets are covering what type of stories really helps you
I
take a step
really was
back
like,
and
I'm
see
not
the media
pausing
landscape
for
as
an
a whole
ad.
thing, rather than just engaging with
I
each
get
individual
that, I get
story at
that.
face value. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a great tool. Go to groundnews.com/AnyAustin or scan the QR
wanna
code
know
on the
what's
screen
on
to
his
subscribe and
head.
save 50%
I think
on their
it's like a
top-tier
hair
Vantage
bow,
plan, which brings the cost down to
or
less
like
than
a-
$5 a month. They also do offer cheaper plans, and they offer like a limited
like
set of
a-
articles for
a
free if you want
Vine
to play
ring?
around with it and see if it seems like a good fit for you. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not, but I like it, so
I don't
how do you
know.
say, why don't
No,
you try
he's
it and
wearing
buy it
multiple
and use
hair
my promo
clips.
code. Where were
Oh,
we?
it's hair
So we've
clips.
talked about Megaton. Now let's talk
Yes.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's get back into this.
Okay. Excuse me.
about Rivet City. Rivet City is larger than Megaton with a total population of 39. Let's take
And
a look
has
at the
drugs.
demographic makeup of Rivet City. You'll notice a significantly
So
higher portion of the
does-
population is working age, and significantly fewer people are old. Here's the Megaton breakdown for comparison. While it's hard to say exactly why this might be the case without digging further into the details of each city, what this does
Because
tell
it's
us
harder
is that
to get
life
to?
expectancy in Megaton may be
Probably
higher
harder
than
to
it
get
is in
in.
Rivet City, and it may indicate
That's
that
Nathan.
Megaton's ability to take care of an aging
Oh.
population is greater. We'll keep that in mind as we continue forward. For comparison, I've broken down the age demographics of the United States of America into roughly the same groups and displayed it in the same format. Notice how Rivet City overall has a bloated working age demographic, but Megaton has a bloated population of old people. Both situations can present a variety of challenges socioeconomically that we won't be getting into today, but you can think to yourself maybe what things may be.
So you have a longer lifespan if you live in Megaton. I really wish he did Tenpenny Tower, because that's got some old people in it too.
Including Tenpenny.
Including Tenpenny.
It actually is interesting, but I think life in Rivet City might be just a little bit harder. Oh yeah, I also think that the priest dude of Adam, I think he's also kind of on the elderly end. I
Yes.
think. I can't quite remember. But I think he may also be elderly, and possibly his wife.
He has a wife?
Yeah, he has a wife.
Huh. Okay.
You'll never
strained
watch
in
me
each
go
circumstance.
in there
With
very
demographics
often.
in mind, but
No,
out of
no,
the way, we
Jericho!
have this
The
big
guy's
question
name
of
is
economics.
Jericho!
How are the local economies doing? Well, the first thing I did was perform a full and complete direct survey of everyone in
Dude,
each
you
settlement to
put
determine
too
the
much work into
unemployment
this.
rate. In some
I
ways, this was
agree,
pretty
but-
easy. Lots
I
of people are
love
forthright with
it.
their employment,
This
like Moira
is
Brown, who
my
runs the shop
favorite
in
kind of
Megaton, or
breakdown.
Gary and Angela Staley, who have a little restaurant in Rivet City. Both places also have spiritual leaders, which we consider employment, as well as doctors and trades workers who repair people and machinery, respectively. Rivet City also has lots of unnamed uniformed security personnel. I counted 7 in my survey, but I admit I could be off by 1 or 2. Everyone else in Rivet City has like a permanent named position, so it was fairly simple to determine their employment status. Megaton, on the other hand, introduced some complexity and really tested our methodology. We consider someone employed if they have a job, right? But we only
Correct.
consider someone unemployed if they don't have a job and they want a job. It's not enough to just not have a job. For example, if you're
Okay,
well off,
but time out. It's only a job if you get paid. What if some of these positions, such as security detail in Rivet City, are volunteer basis?
Okay, but you also have to think about what you can actually consider pay. Because, okay, if I bring technology to the outcast, I don't get paid in caps, but I can get paid in uh ammo or rataways or frag grenade or
Yeah,
stim packs.
trade's fine. Trade's
But
fine.
it's not trade. That's what they're paying me in. I'm getting
That's what I mean.
so,
Trade is fine.
yeah.
You're getting paid in trade.
Yeah. And so
No, I was
that's
talking about if you were doing it on a volunteer basis. Like, what if the security guards volunteered to help protect the Rivet City on a volunteer basis and weren't actually being paid?
okay, so in
Or like
that particular
cafeteria
case,
workers.
So in that particular case, I would view it as a room and board situation. They fill the role of protector in exchange for actually being able to have a bed and a bunk and access to
Oh.
food.
So then it would be paid as trade.
Yes, they are performing a service for the city in exchange for food and a place to lay their head at night, which is a whole lot better than what they would have outside. So if you're able to get a job as a security guard in Rivet City, that is actually a fairly cushy job.
What was
You
the term that Rotten Mango used the other day? An iron bowl? You know, like job security?
Yes, kind of like that, like job security. So I don't think anybody necessarily is doing anything fully voluntarily. They get something out of it.
job to provide for yourself, you're not considered unemployed. You're considered not applicable. Children are not applicable. Really old people are not applicable. Where this gets complicated is with the 2 populations we briefly touched on earlier. You have those devotees of the local religion, and then the unnamed settlers who just wander around every day. There's no way to actually ask these people if they want a job, so it's pretty tough to determine whether they'd qualify as being truly unemployed. When it comes to the religious people,
If you're
they
a
basically
follower
seem to live
with
inside the
an-
church, which I believe implies that they're being cared for by the church.
Okay, but here's the thing. If you're a follower of the church, helping to maintain said church could also be part of the job.
That is absolutely true.
So therefore not applicable, you
I
have a
mean,
job. Whether
okay.
that's janitorial, whether that's an engineer position within the church.
If you look at something like a cult or a commune, okay, these are terrible. Okay,
If you look
don't
at a
join a
cult or a
cult.
commune.
Don't join a cult or anything like that. But there have been several who do things. They can make items that they sell. They obviously don't get anything for it.
No,
but
it goes to the
money.
church.
It brings money into the compound and all that. There was one that I don't remember what it was, but it was a cult in like the 80s and 90s, and it got pretty big. And they literally made like clothing and all kinds of other things. And for a really long time, their leader was like, pretty important. But, and no, I'm not talking about Jonestown. That was a whole nother thing. I think he called himself something Ben Yahweh.
Yes, you were talking in context to Fallout and them making clothes.
Okay, so yes, they would they would make things, they would sell things that they made to make more money, and in exchange they got clothes for themselves, they got fed, they had a roof over their head, they didn't have to worry about bills and all that. And they actually did kind of sort of help out their communities a little bit, and so, which if I remember correctly, we are in my next stream of Fallout gonna find out a little bit more about the Church of Adam.
The Church of Adam?
Yes. That is in Megaton. Because there is a...
Are they in Endgame? What the heck?
Yeah, they're in Endgame. There is a quest in-game that involves the Church of Adam.
What if you kill them? Is the inquest gone?
No.
But if they're dead, how do you do it?
You know those people who are all like, water, please? They're
out
involved.
front?
They're involved.
Okay.
But it kinda involves them, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Those bros.
We got sidetracked.
Okay.
We should probably press play.
In context to the Church of Adam,
yeah,
they probably, as you say, they probably do like help with maintenance. They probably help with cooking. They probably help with cleaning and all of that in exchange for having beds in this place. Because again, guys, in this
and teaching, see the chalkboard? Teaching,
yes. In this post-apocalyptic world, if you can actually have a bed and a place to sleep, you are doing great.
I mean, I think that's the same for pretty much everybody. You don't even have to be in a post-apocalyptic world. If you have a place to lay your head down and a roof over your head, or at least some sort of structure over your head, you're doing great. Give yourself a pat on the back. You're alive.
Good job. All right, press play.
Because their economic needs are being met, I'm going to consider them not applicable rather than unemployed. The unnamed settlers don't have as good of an excuse not to be working, and in fact, I followed some of them around for a few days and I heard one of them say something to the effect of how they didn't have enough money to afford food to eat.
Can't even afford some damn squirrel food.
This, to me, clearly implies that they want a job or at least money, and so I was leaning towards counting all these people as unemployed. However, unfortunately, I found this guy hanging out near the entrance of the town. This guy is clearly employed. So there's got to be some nuance.
Exactly.
To this.
He takes care of the Brahmin.
Day, right? If you follow these people around, these
Brahmin
unnamed, unemployed interlopers, they spend their days just wandering. Occasionally they sit down. Sometimes they rest in the common house. They do eat every so often, so they must get hungry. They stand to listen to the sermon from the fanatical priest, so they must have some desire to belong.
What if they have
some
like
ways,
some
their job
money?
in this world is to remain jobless. That's philosophy, though. We're doing data. What I decided is that the farming gentleman is
from like a
employed, and that
past
this
job.
other guy who has a gun and he eats at this restaurant is also employed because he just kind of seems like he has his life put together. But the rest of these settlers, I'm counting all of them as unemployed. The only other minor conundrum in Megaton was Lucy here. Lucy clearly isn't employed, and she spends her days walking around and drinking at the saloon, but she owns quite a large home and doesn't really want for much, so we're going to consider her not applicable.
Maybe she has family that helps pay for her.
An unemployment rate of
or a husband.
Hey, pause it. No, pause it. Her family's in Arafu. Her parents are dead, and her brother's a vampire.
Oh.
So,
yeah, but her brother is alive in your game, so maybe he sends money back to her every once in a while, like caps.
Maybe. but I think it's more likely that she sends money to them because
But she
we
has
do
no
not,
job.
she does not pay you for going and seeing in any to her family when she's worried about them. She's like, can you take this message to my parents and my brother? And they don't pay you either because they're dead. But but
You get
I
paid
do
with the feat of being a vampire, okay?
but I do have a bit of a theory.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So here is my theory on her. We know that Nova worked for Moriarty.
Yes.
My theory is that it's possible that Lucy maybe did work for Moriarty at one point.
Oh, and saved up all her caps and is now
And
living the
she
life.
managed to get her freedom and a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And she might be continuing being self-employed.
Ah, self-employed.
Whereas Nova
But it's
is
just
still...
a theory.
Yes, it's just a theory. It's just kind of a theory I have.
How press play?
Okay.
No.
Sent.
No.
Sent.
Excuse
Can you
you.
press play?
Sent. 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 If
Oh,
you're
hold
thinking,
up.
sent.
Okay,
If you're thinking to
try now.
yourself, that seems pretty high, you are correct. I think the U.S. unemployment rate right now is like 4%, that's where you want it. Remember, the unemployment rate is just the number of people unemployed divided by the total
Oh,
size
it's
of
much
the
higher
workforce, which does
now.
not include
Much
the not
higher
applicable
now.
category, meaning you have 6 unemployed people out of a total 23 persons, giving us this number. Rivet City's unemployment was a little more straightforward, as I said. The only 2 people I found that I could reasonably consider unemployed were Tammy Hargrave, who is a raging alcoholic that doesn't do anything except drink and yell at her kid,
James's mom, Tammy, is a real bitch.
and Trini, a newer resident of Rivet City who doesn't do anything but drink and steal drugs from the pharmacy. Again, both of these
Fair.
people satisfy the conditions we set forth before of being in a position where it could be reasonably assumed that they would
Again,
prefer to have a
pause it.
stable source of income based on the way
Again.
they're behaving, even though they don't technically.
One could say that Tammy is also self-employed. I don't know enough about the pigtail-headed girl, but one could say that Tammy is self-employed.
But it's a theory and not actually
It's
stated.
a theory. It's a theory, not actually stated, but
She has
you
to
know,
somehow find money in order to, like,
exactly
buy the drugs.
And
But isn't there, like,
or alcohol.
gambling in Rivet City? Am I wrong on that?
I think you're thinking of New Vegas.
Okay.
But again, she could be.
Because I was gonna say
Self-employed?
she could, like, make money through gambling.
I mean, they might have gambling. I just don't remember for absolute certain.
Okay.
Actually say, I want a job. For contrast, let's take a look at this guy. His name is Ted Strayer. Ted also doesn't have an explicit job, and he does seem to have a
Strayer.
drug addiction, but his demeanor and general outlook on life is fairly positive and unconcerned.
Whoa. What's the rush, dude?
Whoa.
Which makes it more likely that he's not in as immediate need for work, and therefore we're considering him not applicable. In previous surveys we've often considered anyone who appeared to live on the street or to have a substance abuse issue to be unemployed if they didn't explicitly have a job. In hindsight, the Bureau of Labor
Wait a
Statistics considers
second.
that judgment to have been a little
it's like
imprecise and
Skyrim
unempathetic, so
or
we're striving
Oblivion
to
or
improve our
something.
assessments going forward, and this is an example of that. Overall, we've calculated Rivet City to have an unemployment rate of 9.4%. When you look at this, you look at these two, it's easy to
How is a drug addict considered unemployed when
Yeah, but yes,
they have
but
to pay
if you-
for it?
Okay, but if you think about it, the people who actually run the chem shop, I lost connection again. The people who actually run the chem shop, her husband, Holly, is also a drug addict. He samples their wares. And you can actually lose karma and kill him if you give him psycho. He ODs. And that's just the end of him. Otherwise, he will just keep asking you for psycho and he'll complain about it wife keeping him away from the shop and all that, and like his wife is like, I gotta keep my husband away from the shop. He is
But my
technically
point is, if you're going to keep buying it, where are you getting the money that not every drug addict is unemployed? You know what I mean?
yes. Well,
Yeah.
he could do odd jobs. He could steal.
Then that
He
would
may be
make
really
him
good at pickpocketing,
self-employed.
and he could be self-employed in another way too. Um,
He could also make the drug.
he could. There are people who do that in the game as well. So he could. There's a lot of things he maybe.
Is coming to the defense of these unemployed drug addicts.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this out there, but Miss Weatherly, who owns the Weatherly Hotel, maybe she's his sugar mama. Maybe she is his sugar mama.
Maybe.
I'm just saying, there could be a great deal many things that we don't see in the background.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna press play.
To say, wow, Rivet City better than Megaton. But it's important to remember that this data isn't inherently normatively loaded or loaded. It would just be loaded. It's just an annoying way of saying that it's just data. We can draw conclusions from it if we want, and that's what data is good for, but those conclusions aren't inherent to it. You know, we can conclude that a 9.4% unemployment rate is better than a 26.1% unemployment rate, but that's a conclusion that we're drawing. It's not
Old
a given,
age
okay? Let's absorb
well.
this data into our analysis and then take a look
They're
at
not-
it.
he did
Another
talk
thing
about
we
that.
catalog during our census is which industry each person worked in. Things like shopkeeper, medicine, maintenance, etc. The categories we used were made by me, so they aren't like objective, but they'll shed some more light on the economic situation here. Let's take a look at Megaton first. It's interesting that hospitality, that is people working in bars or restaurants, make up the plurality of workers in Megaton, but overall, it's a pretty good mix. Obviously, with a population as small as it is, when you see 5% of workers are in the medical field,
They
that
could have
literally
more
just means there's
agriculture.
one guy working in the medical field, but you know, it is what it is. Interestingly, the one person working in agriculture is that unnamed settler who hangs out with the cow, and the one person working in shipping and trade is Mr. Billy Creel, who could maybe be considered a mercenary because he's working as a caravan guard, but he specifically talks about how his work allows the businesses in Megaton to stay supplied.
Helps keep the town supplied.
So I decided to consider him more of a shipping and tradesman. Not tradesman, whatever. I don't have to get all the words right, okay? Just like 80%. The two things that I want you to hold on from this graph as we switch to Rivet Cities are the categories of law enforcement and mercenary, which account for 10 and 15% of the employment in Megaton, respectively. Okay, let's switch. Law enforcement in Rivet City takes up 31% of the workforce, and I'm pretty sure we're actually
a lot of law
underestimating that a little
enforcement.
bit. That's a lot of cops.
That's because
I
they
guess
have a
there's
lot of
reason why they say
security.
it's the safest place in the wasteland.
We're the safest, most secure city in the wasteland.
If you were
They
to
are.
extrapolate that to a
You
per capita
Harkness.
number that we could compare to the United States of America, that would be the equivalent of 31,000 cops per 100 residents. For reference, the city with the most cops in all of the US of A is Washington, D.C., which makes sense, and it has 543 officers per 100,000 residents. Yes, you heard that right. Rivet City has 57 times the number of cops as the most policed city in all of the United States, which ironically is the city that Rivet City is located in. Like literally, Rivet City is.
Well,
it's
good
in
for Rivet
post-apocalyptic
City.
Washington,
Good job.
DC. Kind of funny. I wonder if they
That-
thought about that.
We're the safest, most secure city in the wasteland.
Speaking of being set in Washington, D.C., technically,
Irony is
because
often
Fallout 3
ironic.
is
Yes.
near the U.S. Capitol. That means that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is the government organization responsible for surveying and consolidating data about labor in the United States, should be canon in the Fallout universe, given that it was founded in 1884, and the Fallout universe didn't diverge from our own until the 1940s. I wonder if we could locate the Bureau of Labor Statistics within Fallout 3. In real life, the Bureau is located near Union Station, a large passenger rail depot in Washington, D.C. Conveniently,
I
this
wanna
is almost
see.
at exactly the 90-degree meeting point if you draw lines directly north from the U.S. Capitol and directly east from the White House. So if we use the same strategy to triangulate its position in Fallout 3 using the game's representation of the U.S. Capitol and the White House,
Okay, so we're trying to figure out where the Labor Bureau is and
Else we would
Fallout.
end up
Statistics
here.
Bureau thing is.
Interestingly, the game also has a large train station here called Metro Central, but it's likely modeled after the real-life Metro Center, which is not the same as Union Station, which is the train depot located here in real life. If you're not following, just close your eyes. We'll be done soon. That said, if we take some artistic liberties and see the game's Metro Central as an amalgamation for both real-life's Metro Center and real-life's Union Station, we could use that to estimate with some degree of accuracy the location of the Bureau of Labor Statistics in Fallout 3, which can then be determined to be most likely either this building or this building. If you're keeping score, this is, in fact, the third video in the last 12 months in which we've discussed Washington, D.C.'s Union Station, and the second video in the last 12 months in which we've spent some portion of time trying to locate a digital representation of the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm Manny Austin, and thanks for watching indeed. One other major difference I want to draw between the industries in both of these locations is in the science and academics field. Megaton has zero people
really
working in this
respect
industry.
this guy
Most of Megaton's labor is spent on
and
things that are lower.
I respect this guy, and excuse me, guys, I gotta go break up the cats. For the new people here, we have 3 cats.
Okay, you were saying you admire this guy and his dedication.
Yeah, I do. I admire his dedication. And you know what? It takes a lot of work for those statistics, and I'm here for it. And it does sound like something I would do if I wasn't so lazy. And or my executives functioned better.
Your executives function better.
Yes. Yes, yes.
On the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like providing safe drinking water, food, and shelter to its citizens, whereas Rivet City, though it's obviously more of a police state with probably more wealth inequality, has enough resource access to allow some of its citizens to do research on bettering the world or to maintain museums of culture. Neither of these situations is inherently better or worse, but it's a distinct difference. The very last piece of data I want to include here before we make a final decision on which place would be a better place to find a job is the GDP, the gross domestic product. This is one of those phrases that people on TV say to help justify all the wealth inequality we have in America. But it also is a real thing. Like, it's a thing that has some informational value. It basically just means the monetary value of everything we make in a whole year. So, like, imagine if we took everyone in Megaton and added up the cost of all the food and the drinks they made, all the toys they sold, all the services they provided, etc. for a whole year. That would be the GDP. Now that I say that out loud, I have no idea how they calculate the GDP in America. How would you even begin? Calculating the actual GDP in a video game is kind of dumb and maybe impossible. So what I've decided to do instead is just add up the value of every single item in every single shop and all the money that every vendor has on hand in both of these towns and consider that the equivalent of GDP. It's not perfect, but as a way of comparing two separate places, it should illuminate some interesting facts for us. Megaton has 4 vending establishments, which altogether have a combined value of 10,765 caps. Caps are the currency in the game. I don't know if I mentioned that already. Rivet City, unsurprisingly, given that it's a bigger place, has a slightly higher GDP of 14,317 caps spread.
Did you say something?
I said he did. He did mention that already.
Across 6 vendors. If you take those numbers and divide it by the total population, we can get the GDP per capita, which is another important figure of economics.
Go back. I want just go back slightly. I want to see the vendors he put up.
Okay, for Rivet City or?
Yeah, for Rivet City. And then pause it on those vendors.
17 caps.
There you go.
He completely and utterly forgot the Weatherly Hotel.
Oh, no.
He forgot the Weatherly Hotel.
Can you buy something from the Weatherly?
Yes, they serve food.
Oh.
You can buy food and stim packs and things. There is a Mr. Handy there. So
interesting. I don't know if in Rivet City they included Moriarty's place either. We have the Megaton Clinic, the
165 cap.
No, he included Moriarty's.
He did include Moriarty's because Moriarty's is not only a saloon, but it is also functions as an inn because you can put a room there. So they forgot. So his data is skewed because he
currency in the game. I don't know if I mentioned that already.
Right.
Unsurprisingly, given that it's
He completely left out the Weatherly Hotel.
Unless he mentions it afterwards. Let's find out.
Maybe.
The
We'll
bigger
find
place
out.
has a slightly higher GDP of 14,317 caps spread across 6 vendors. If you take
Okay.
those numbers and divide it by the total population, we can get the GDP per capita, which is another
So
important
I don't
figure
think
of
he
economic
does.
health. Megaton's GDP per
Nope.
capita then would be 336 caps, where Rivet City's is 358 caps. However, you know where your parents always told you to find the devil, right? He's in the details. Or they're in the, I should say they, we don't really know. The devil is they, them. Anyway, some of
Fair.
the details in Megaton are a little fishy. If you head down to Craterside Supply,
I'm
which is
for
the
it.
general goods store in Megaton, you'll find that shop owner Moira Brown is selling a few items at a ridiculously high price, including blueprints for weapons and furniture. These items are worth over 1,000 caps each and are dramatically more expensive than anything else available, which leads me to believe that they might be artificially inflated for some reason. If you remove just that handful of ludicrously expensive items from her shop, Megaton's, this is not a joke, Megaton's total GDP drops by a staggering 6,000 caps, bringing its GDP per capita down to 151. Yikes. So where does that leave us here? Which place is better? Well, between a significantly lower
that's a good
unemployment
question.
rate, a more diversified economy, and a significantly higher GDP per capita, there's no question that strictly economically speaking, Rivet City is where you would want to go if you were looking for a job in Fallout 3. People there literally talk about how they need more people willing and able to work.
This place could use a few more people willing to work.
But you know,
I could be
economics
on the janitorial
isn't
staff.
everything. It's a lot, but it isn't everything. If you moved to Rivet City, you'd also
Okay,
have
pause
to
it.
contend with living in a dark metal box with less opportunity for fresh.
Pause it. So here's also the problem, though. Rivet City is probably a little harder to get into than Megaton.
Yeah.
Their space is going to be a little more limited. They can
Yes.
always add more beds, but I mean, they are going. It could be very much more difficult to
You can
actually be
only
able to get into
expand
Megaton.
so much as well. Megaton can keep building on the outside of Megaton if they wish to, where Rivet City is stuck with the size of the ship that they are in, and also the weight
Exactly.
of the ship. Like if they go over their weight, it could cause issues
It
on the
could,
ship.
exactly. And I mean, whereas there is places you can expand, if you wanted to build shacks and stuff up on where the aircraft carrier part, where the vertibirds and all were, you could build houses up there. So there is some room for expansion,
Mm-hmm.
but you would have to get the supplies and all that up there, and that could be tedious. But it is possible. But getting into Rivet City seems like it's going to be more because they have an entire council. They actually have like a council. They mentioned that. So they also have a much higher police force. So there is probably some sort of like application process
Probably to get in.
to get in. They probably only want a certain type of person, although to be fair, there do seem to be some people, but they may have already been there. I
Also,
don't know.
depending on where you're coming from, where you live versus where you're going, it is entirely too dangerous trying to get to Rivet City, let alone filling out an application and waiting for the process.
Yes, because you are so close to because you are so close to the Jefferson Memorial, that place is crawling with super mutants. Which, trying to get to Rivet City, you have to contend with the super mutants and all of that. And it can be a little more difficult. Not impossible, depending on the route you take. There is a route that's safer. But even then, shit happens out there in the wasteland.
Right.
So it would seem that Megaton is probably going to be more easy to get into a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they have the
And you can
settlers
build a
who-
reputation there to then get into Rivet City. Megaton, to me, would be like a starter place. Like, if you were going to
Yes.
build a business, you could build a reputation for that business in Megaton as like a starter business and move your business over to Rivet City, where you could maybe make more capita there, but there's a process to get there.
Exactly. You got to get in there and you got to get a bed first. You got to make some friends, and then maybe you can get a good word in, and you can to Raven City.
Can you imagine going to Rivet City and they're like, "Do you have any recommendations? Who can we call to talk to see about what kind of person you are, to see if you're a good fit for our
That's
place?"
also a very good point. Bitter Melon says, in some routes to Rivet City is only accessible via the metro. And
Yeah.
as you know, the metros are crawling with ghouls and mole rats and raiders.
Yeah.
So an ordinary wasteland settler is not going to be able to just get there. Megaton is a more accessible kind of place. Whereas Rivet City, like, honestly, I think I only go to Rivet City, but I don't as a whole go to Rivet City all that often. In fact, I mean, like, I can like, fast travel there to go sell stuff, but even then I don't. I just go back to Megaton.
fresh air. You'd also be living right on the edge of an incredibly violent war zone of Washington, D.C.
We made that
Traveling
point
would be
earlier.
Extremely dangerous.
We
And sure,
did.
that location may then explain the overwhelming security force in the city, but you'd also have to be okay living in a police state. That kind of protection does often come with significant trade-offs. Also, let's not forget that, for whatever reason, Megaton does have a higher population of older folks, and it
We
does
made that
manage to
point,
sustain
too.
a fairly large population of the unemployed. In fact, one of the few old folks there are in Rivet City is literally thinking about hurling himself off a cliff because he feels his life has no meaning.
I wish I had the courage to end it all.
Perhaps that's a good indicator that
That's
Megaton
sad.
social services, or I guess at the very least the human generosity of
Ooh,
its citizens,
social
is in a better
services.
place than Rivet City. So, the point is, data is amazing, and sometimes I
Yeah,
think it's the only
I do feel like
fundamental truth in
Megaton
this
has a
confusing and difficult
more
world. At the end of the
community
day,
to it
you are a
than
human
Rivet
being.
City does.
You're not a
I
data
agree.
machine. You're a vibes machine, and you have to take vibes into account as well, especially when deciding where to move. So, just keep that in mind. But personally, I would move to Rivet City because I like things that are depressing.
I wish I had the courage to end
I'm Annie Austin. Thanks for watching.
Hey, that was good.
That was fun. That was
Yeah,
actually
that.
fun.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint, choosing between Tenpenny Tower and Megaton, I personally always choose Megaton.
Oh yeah, Megaton is by far the most superior of the cities.
Yes. Rivet City, living there is not an option. I definitely think that Megaton, although it is not it's not totally pretty to look at, it does have some law and order. It does have, plus it's got a robot.
Yes, it's got a
Deputy,
robot. Megaton's the better of the options,
Yeah, like Tenpenny Tower, oh my god, those residents are so insufferable.
But I guess if you want to be a security guard, Rivet City is where it's at.
Exactly. And I would say your chances probably of trying to train as a security guard are actually pretty good. And let's not forget, there was that escaped slave that they did let in, and she was very upset because one of the people there was slavers. I guess they don't do background check.
Interesting. Well, that was this episode of Finding a Job in Fallout 3 Post-Apocalyptic Economy. We'll catch you in the next one. If you want to make a recommendation, you can catch it in Discord. You can recommend it in Discord. Our link is down below. Yeah. So,
And I'm just going to say, he didn't talk about finding a job. He talked about finding a city. Just saying.
we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye!